the main exhibit of the Museum of Bethel Woods. And we have a cafe, a full museum shop with all the Woodstock and 60s souvenirs that you can imagine. And we're about to go into the exhibit.
All right.
No photography or sound recordings of any kind.
I feel honored. Oh my gosh.
The museum is actually a book of 3 chapters. The first chapter is the 1960s. The second chapter is Woodstock. And the third chapter is the legacy of Woodstock in the 60s. What are we left 40 years later with? This introductory gallery here introduces some of the characters, because a lot of our story is told through first-person narrative. We have 20 films.
20 films on there.
6 interactives. All of them completely designed and produced specifically for the museum.
Wow. Local reporters, so you get, oh my gosh.
Now,
yes.
This is the beginning of our 1960s area, and we start off with what was life like in the 1960s. Suburbia, the coming of the Kennedy administration and passing the torch to a new generation. Music consisted mostly of teen idols on 45s, AM radio, songs about love, songs about puppy love. And then, of course, there was folk music that actually had some message to it, but that wasn't as popular yet. The Beach Boys came along, that changed American music, and then the Beatles came along and changed world music.
Well.
And of course, the Beatles, their original songs were all about love and puppy love as well. It was much later before they changed and got messages a little deeper than love.
Yes.
We have an interactive over here, one of 3 interactives where you can explore the music of the era. And this particular one is about the music from 1960 to 1968. They're touch screens, and you can touch...
Oh, you can touch...
I'll show you.
Okay.
When you touch the screen and explore the music, through the headphones you hear some narrative about the music of the 1960s. And once the narrative is over, you can go from year to year to year.
Oh, wow.
Say 1965. In 4 different genres: pop, folk and country, R&B, and rock.
For that year.
1965 rock, it's probably going to be, what, Beatles or Stones?
Yep.
Gary Lewis and the Playboys, This Diamond Ring. So you see the single cover, the picture sleeve, you hear a little bit of the music, and you hear some commentary. The commentary was written by Ben Fong Torres of Rolling Stone, and the narration was done by Dennis Elsas, who is now on XM Sirius Radio.
Wow.
But you could spend hours just exploring the music, year by year, genre by genre.
And you got to bring the war home here. This was that Vietnam idealism and intervention.
In this part of the museum, we talk about the civil rights movement. We talk about the student protests. We talk about the Vietnam War and the growing dissent against that war in the draft. It's an important part of the 60s.
Yep.
In fact, probably the defining point of the 60s. Of course, you have to have the peace flag.
Oh yeah, we've already did a...
Ironically, this one was borrowed from a Canadian citizen.
A Canadian citizen.
We borrowed this from a guy from Canada.
And that's something.
We have a timeline, but we also have not just the picture and text panels, but we have a video timeline as well.
Oh,
it goes
yes.
year by year. Here we're seeing the Kennedy assassination.
Wow. And this is a classic picture of the countercultural.
Exactly.
Wow.
As we progress through the 60s, we get from the early 60s and 45s and AM radio, we move to the later 60s, 67, 68, when FM radio became king. Much clearer sound, stereo, and more free-form programming. It wasn't unusual for disc jockeys to be able to program their own music and play entire album sides. And it was also very common that you'd hear folk, rock, jazz, blues, pop, all, even country, all in one radio station, because it was more about discovering the new sounds.
Right.
It was much less programmed than in the early 60s on AM radio. So no longer is it 45s, it's now LPs.
It's now LPs, wow.
And they're long tracks. You can have a 10-minute song and nobody blinks at it. And of course, some of the pivotal albums of the time, The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced, The Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's, of course, Disraeli Gears, Cream, Aretha Franklin, Simon and Garfunkel. It's funny, you see another case with other pivotal music, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Creedence Clearwater, Van Morrison, Jefferson Airplane, Big Brother with Janis Joplin, and of course Otis Redding. A lot of Woodstock came from that Monterey Pop Festival that happened in 1967. Otis Redding was one of the hits, so was Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Who. Many of the acts that were at Monterey were also at Woodstock.
Wow. And there's a classic picture of the counterculture.
Oh, yeah.
And Retreat at Renewal. I see you also got Timothy Leary down there.
Yeah, you can't talk about the 60s without talking about Timothy Leary, the beat generation, the psychedelic generation, all of that was a part of the 60s.